So,
Want to look at you or the camera?
look toward me.
Okay.
All right. So, just to start, could you tell me your name and a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm Greg Peterson. I'm an attorney in Jamestown, New York, one of the co-founders of the Robert H. Jackson Center, and a native of Jamestown.
So, do you mind just giving me like a quick timeline of the Jackson Center? You just want to tell me just like the story of it, it's like from its beginnings up until now.
I guess I became interested in things related to Robert Jackson as a member of the Jamestown Bar Association. And as a member, clearly the most distinguished attorney we've ever had in the history of our bar was Robert H. Jackson. I was involved in part of the planning of the statue which was erected in 1996 by Love School, which Justice Sandra Day O'Connor came and basically commemorated the unveiling. And it was at that time where you heard Justice O'Connor talk about the greatness of Robert Jackson, a product of this area and the school system, and we should be justly proud. So in 1996, perhaps that was the beginning of an inspiration which found more focused in the year 2000. Why? Because that was the 100th anniversary of the Jamestown Bar Association, and we asked George Niebank, who was a counsel and a clerk to Robert Jackson, to be our keynote speaker. So he came, and there was a Jackson connection, and we had that coupled with some words from the biographer of Robert Jackson, a guy named Eugene Gerhardt. So 2000, it became much more real, and in 2000, late 2000, I met with Betty Linnae, Carl Kappa, and Tom Cardman of the Gebbe Foundation, and that's really where all of these little seeds began to find fruit. So December 14th, 2000 really is our Founders Day.
Okay, and so do you mind speaking a little bit as to like how like that like working, like you said, you mentioned like the seeds were kind of like planted, but can you kind of explain how they grew, and so how did those seeds become the Jackson Center?
The Robert Jackson Center, as we're sitting here now, is a 19,000 square foot facility, formerly known as the Jamestown Consistory, which was part of a Masonic order. The contemplative thoughts in 2000 was to really have a small building with just a small exhibitry to honor Robert Jackson. There was a similar one already, which was here in Jamestown on Lucille Ball, and we just sort of want to replicate it. Well, this particular building became available, and through the encouragement of Betty Linnae, Judge Willard Cass, and a few others, I made the approach to see if this building might be available. Well, the next thing you know, it was. Next thing you know, we made a contract offer. It was accepted, and we bought this building. At the same time, those seeds which had been planted in December 14th, 2000, I brought them all back together, and among the Gebbe Foundation, Carl Kappa, and Betty Linnae, they all gave us $500,000. So that's where the seeds found purpose here in this building. And then the building was in 2001, we purchased it. And I don't want to say the rest is history, but a lot has happened since then.
All right. So here's one. Why Robert H. Jackson? So can you give me a little bit more as to like why like you feel like you have the personal connection to go through you know, I'm sure the many hoops and hurdles you had to go through in order to like get this building and to make it such an established place that it is. What was it about Robert H. Jackson that drove you to, you know, remember his legacy in this way?
Well, Robert H. Jackson, one, is the only Supreme Court justice from Western New York, a resident of Jamestown, New York, native of this area. That never happened, and it's fair to say that within the jurisdiction that I grew up in, virtually nobody knew much about him, other than he was a justice of the Supreme Court, not sure really when. He had something to do with Nuremberg, not sure what. He was practiced law here in Jamestown, but not sure really what he did here. And he's buried in Frewsburg, New York. It's kind of what they knew a little bit, not much. And since he died in 1954, not many contemporaries were around. So it seemed important to pause to reflect on a native who did very, very well on the national and international scene. And so that perhaps motivated me. The other thing was, since a few of his contemporaries were still alive, we wanted to capture their history. And we did so using this facility as a loci, if you will, or a central point. And also safe to say, just gathering memorabilia on Jackson's career, which we had none. I mean, zero. No autograph pictures, no anything when we got started, and now we have quite a collection. Sort of motivated us, and many people jumped on the bandwagon. I may have been one of the people that facilitated it, the mixmaster, but trust me, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the community, regionally, nationally, internationally, who've all been parts of this reason to honor Robert H. Jackson. And the more we frankly dug into it, the more we understood that he accomplished a tremendous amount on the domestic scene and certainly the international scene, and we've seen that in our various programming over the almost 20 years we've been in existence.
And could you just maybe give me like, I guess you kind of explained it, but could you maybe just like tell me like what the mission, like overall like mission of like the center is?
I guess in its simplistic terms, it's to advance the legacy of Robert H. Jackson through exhibitry, education, and his relevancy today. That has found form in so many areas, whether it's executive powers, whether it's in the integration, whether it's in the form of international criminal law. These are things which are incredibly important. And today, even though again he died 1954, is so real and relevant today. And that's what's really exciting for us, is this is not just a location, a museum honoring Robert Jackson, a staid museum where you come, you look, you see, wow, he's real, and it's active today. And we've had many academics, many participants who've been at the Jackson Center to not only extol the virtues of what Jackson did and the time he did it, but more importantly, what its direction, gives us direction here today.
So let's kind of move into like, I guess, like the current state of things here at the Jackson Center. So a lot going on here. So as of recent, so we got renovations, you can hear those right now. The new president and like a ton of new programming. And from what I understand, there's going to be like a more of a push towards getting more involved in like the community. So I guess to maybe just start that off with, how have things been with like the new president?
Well, we've been pleased to, as a result of a pretty thorough search, to obtain the services of Kristen McMahon. Kristen is an attorney. She's been involved in the not-for-profit community. Graduated from St. Bonaventure University, which is a well-respected university hereby, and has come in with a great deal of vision. She led the board through its very active strategic planning process, which we're now finding fruit. from that process. And so she's very focused on taking the Jackson Center in for the next 5, 10, and 20 years.
And could you maybe speak about like some of the programming that's been going on here? You know, from like the CLEs and then maybe like law dialogues, like things along those lines.
Well, we've tried to have programming which is somewhat Jackson-centric. Sometimes it's more obvious than others, but it's also fundamentally there's a rule of law which Jackson found incredibly important in everything he did, which is the focus on what we do. We have, in the early days, had several programs which related to Jackson specific, whether they were clerks and fellow colleagues and prosecutors from the Nuremberg trial, clerks from the law cases that were very important in Jackson's careers, such as Brown versus Board of Education, Korematsu, Barnett, the Youngstown Seal seizure. We actually spent time focusing in on studying the case and bringing back the personalities who were here. We've had various actual individuals who were in the civil rights movement here, people who were involved in the Supreme Court. We've had 4 Supreme Court justices come to the center. Chief Justice Rehnquist, who was a law clerk, Chief Justice Roberts, who was a law clerk to Rehnquist. Rehnquist was a law clerk to Jackson. And we had Sandra Day O'Connor, we've had Justice Ginsburg. Anthony Kennedy was kind of here virtually by being at Chautauqua and talking about us. So we've really had that connect. We've had people who were former Solicitor Generals, former Attorney Generals come here, all of which talking about the relevancy of Robert Jackson. So it's kind of that personality-based and getting a firm grasp of his biography through the individuals who were either indirectly impacted by him or were directly impacted by him.
And we'll talk about the law dialogues a little bit.
Sure. Jackson always said that his perhaps greatest achievement was being the chief American prosecutor at the Nuremberg trial. And from that Nuremberg trial and its antecedent treaty, which is called the London Agreement, led to the template that was used, the London Agreement, template for the Nuremberg trial and also the Tokyo trial. And as a result of that Nuremberg trial process in 1991 or so, the United Nations adopted a treaty which ultimately led to the tribunal in Yugoslavia and Rwanda. And there were tribunals in Sierra Leone, Cambodia, and Lebanon. And ultimately there was created the International Criminal Court. All of those had direct legacies of the Nuremberg trial. In 2007, David Crane, who was the first American to be a chief prosecutor at an international tribunal, and I talked about having a gathering of all of the chief prosecutors. And that occurred in August of 2007 at Chautauqua Institution. And fantastic, where we've had all of those be convened here to share their stories, share their prosecutions privately and publicly. And that has been going on up through this year. So we just had our, 12th, 13th International Humanitarian Law Roundtable.
I mean, I guess I could either leave the community involvement questions to Marion, maybe. Like, were you familiar with some of those things, or would I rather dump those on Marion, you think?
Well, she's currently dealing with that, so perhaps that'd be
probably better for Marion to get to those. All right, and guess just to like finish up, there's a couple things that. What's next for the Jackson Center, like moving forward?
Well, what's next is, and this is very exciting, is really a changing of the guard. I think the personalities, and I include myself, that have been part and parcel of the Jackson Center for the last almost 20 years are still engaged and involved, but at the same time it's time for a different generation, different process, because I think that's critical for the sustainability of the center. The Jackson Center is a institution. We have been bringing in new board members, new staff members. I think that's important and critical. And so this is a time, there's a new strategic plan which focuses excuse me, on the educational aspects of Jackson and is going forward, which we've done, but now it's a real strategic focus. And with that, also comes new opportunities, new people, new blood, new energy, new Brian Hills of the world, who going to make a difference, new technology, just becoming more current. So I think that's a major part of what's going forward. We do have a strategic plan, which is drawing closure. Kristen's leading that charge, as are some other younger folks, including we have a new chairman of our board, Leah Weinberg. I look forward to continuing to work with her. So I see this as a transition period. It's a very positive transition. It's an upward ascension of where the Jackson is and where the Jackson will be. And I think it's very exciting times for us.
Just one last thing. Of all the work and time, energy, effort, money that you put into this place, what does it mean to Greg Peterson?
I think it's drawn attention to our community. It's drawn attention to some of the skill sets which arrive from just growing up in this community, and that with determination and in using Jackson as a role model, any person, no matter what your background, he grew up on a farm, not a lot of money at all, pulled himself up by the bootstraps, was a self-created person who read for the law, took an extra year in high school. All those things are really, once we learn about that and see what he accomplished, that can be applied in so many instances. And I'd like to think the Jackson Center in Jamestown highlights not only our region, our activities, but also a personality which can clearly make a difference in the lives today and in generations to come. And so for that, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled by the fact also this is not just a museum. It's just not a gathering point of a lot of artifacts, which I'm glad we have. Trust me, I'm an artifact guy, and I'm an oral history guy, and that's what makes me get juiced up. And I'm thrilled we've been able to accomplish that over the last 20 years, where we were able to get YouTube hits of over 11 million people just by gathering and collating and doing this. I love that. But that's a base. That's a base upon which we can grow. And with that growth can come a great deal of education, locally, regionally, nationally. And I see there's opportunities for tremendous strategic alliances. And with that will come further growth of the center.
All right. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to say to the camera?
Brian Hill has done a great job, and we're delighted Brian's made the community part of his life. Yep, and welcome, and we look forward to you and your abilities here to take us to the next level.
Thank you, sir. That was great. So I think there's plenty of good stuff there, all the history. Just so you know, like the way I was planning on doing it, I was gonna have you kind of give, because it's gonna be a short film, right? And so I was gonna have you give the history and talk about pretty much everything you talked about, hit them all, and then I was gonna bring Kristen in, and then like probably like finish up with Marion and do some intercutting about what you guys think the place means. Because from what I understand, we're showing this to people who are like new to the Jackson Center.
I don't know what the...
That's why.
I'm delighted, whatever you're doing, I'm delighted, but I leave that to Kristen for whatever she has in mind.
Yeah.